Right now, Russian warships are patrolling the Gulf of Oman. Chinese naval vessels are moving through the northern Indian Ocean, some operating within tracking distance of U.S. carrier groups. Iranian forces are conducting live drills near one of the most critical oil choke points on Earth, the Strait of Hormuz. Trump said, "We sent beautiful aircraft carriers toward Iran." Imam Khamenei said, "And we have prepared beautiful weapons to drown them. This isn't routine, this is coordinated." The United States didn't send a warning, it sent an armada. The USS Abraham Lincoln is already operating in the region. Now it's being reinforced by one of the most advanced warships ever built, the USS Gerald R, bringing stealth fighters, guided missile destroyers, electronic warfare aircraft, and layered missile defense systems within striking distance of Tehran. 3 powers, 1 waterway, and a region already on edge over nuclear negotiations and rising U.S. deployments. Iran and Russia had just concluded joint naval drills in the Strait of Hormuz, that narrow 21-mile corridor through which 1/5 of the world's traded oil passes every single day. On the surface, the exercises looked like a standard display of military partnership between two nations united by their opposition to American power. But defense analysts watching the movements more carefully saw something else entirely. Cameron Chell, of defense firm Dragonfly, put it plainly: the Russian drills had provided the perfect veil. Under cover of that exercise, Iran had repositioned strike drones and other military assets along its southern coastline, moving them into what analysts described as strike positions, while American satellites and surveillance aircraft tracked the movements from above. Iran is not a conventional enemy. It does not fight the way the United States fights, does not build weapons the way the United States builds them, and does not measure victory the way the United States measures it. What Iran has developed over decades of sanctions, isolation, and conflict is something far more difficult to neutralize than a traditional military. A layered, adaptive, asymmetric threat doctrine designed specifically to exploit the weaknesses of a technologically superior opponent. Understanding how dangerous Iran actually is to American forces in the region and how the United States plans to neutralize each of those dangers is the only way to understand what is truly at stake in the Persian Gulf right now. The first and most immediate threat Iran poses is to the waterway that sits at the center of everything. The Strait of Hormuz is 21 miles wide at its narrowest point, and through it passes roughly 1/5 of all the world's traded oil every single day. Iran has spent decades preparing to turn that corridor into a kill zone. Its navy maintains thousands of naval mines, including a new generation of smart mines capable of recognizing the acoustic signature of specific types of vessels lying dormant on the seabed until the right target passes overhead. In a conflict, Iran would deploy those mines from submarines, from small boats, and from vessels disguised as civilian traffic, seeding the shipping lanes without warning. The economic consequences alone would be immediate and global. Insurance premiums for tankers would spike overnight. Oil prices would surge. The message to Washington and its allies would be clear. The cost of a conflict with Iran is not paid only on a battlefield. It is paid at the pump, in the markets, and in the supply chains of every nation that depends on Gulf crude. The United States' answer to the mine threat comes primarily from littoral combat ships specifically designed for mine countermeasure missions, operating in the confined waters of the Gulf alongside mine-sweeping assets and underwater vehicles capable of detecting and neutralizing mines before the main battle fleet has to pass through. Ships like the USS Canberra, USS Tulsa, and USS Santa Barbara have been assigned specifically to Gulf security and mine countermeasure missions Army recognition, understanding that clearing the strait is not just a tactical problem, but a prerequisite for everything else the U.S. Navy wants to do in the region. The second threat is the swarm. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy operates hundreds of small, fast attack craft armed with heavy machine guns, rockets, and anti-ship missiles. The tactic is brutally simple. Rather than challenging an American destroyer in a one-on-one engagement that Iran would lose within minutes, the IRGC launches dozens of these small boats simultaneously from every direction, presenting more targets than a single ship's close-in defense systems can track and eliminate at once. The third threat is the one that keeps naval planners awake at night more than any other. Iran's coastline along the Gulf is mountainous and rugged, ideal terrain for concealing mobile missile launchers. The IRGC uses what military analysts call shoot-and-scoot tactics. A launcher truck drives to a firing position, fires a missile at an American surface ship or a commercial tanker, and moves immediately to a new location before a retaliatory strike can be called in. The missiles themselves include anti-ship variants with enough range and precision to threaten vessels anywhere in the Gulf. This effectively transforms the entire body of water into a contested space where no ship is safe from land, and where the threat is almost impossible to eliminate entirely because the launchers are constantly moving. The American response to this problem involves a combination of persistent surveillance from MQ-4C Triton drones flying at 50,000 feet, real-time targeting data fed to strike aircraft and ship-launched Tomahawk missiles, and a deliberate strategy of degrading those coastal missile sites in the opening hours of any conflict before they can be used again. The fourth threat lives beneath the surface. The Persian Gulf is shallow, which works against America's large nuclear submarines that need deep water to operate effectively. But it works perfectly for Iran's fleet of diesel-electric mini-submarines, small, quiet vessels that can sit motionless on the seabed for extended periods, waiting for a high-value target to pass overhead. The fifth threat is the one Iran has invested in most heavily over the past decade, and the one that proved most visible when an Iranian Shahed drone turned toward the USS Abraham Lincoln earlier this month. Iran has built itself into a drone superpower, maintaining inventories of loitering munitions capable of being launched in massive coordinated waves designed to saturate the defensive systems of American surface ships. The tactic is not to sink an aircraft carrier with a single drone, which a Shahed cannot do. The American answer to this ballistic missile threat is the most sophisticated layered air defense architecture ever assembled in a single theater. Patriot PAC-3 batteries in Qatar and Bahrain, terminal high-altitude area, defense systems in Jordan, and Aegis-equipped destroyers armed with SM-3 and SM-6 interceptors create a multi-layered shield against ballistic and cruise missile threats. Army recognition. The logic is interception at every altitude. Ballistic missiles coming in high get engaged by THAAD and SM-3. Cruise missiles and drones coming in low get engaged by Patriot and the Aegis ships. And anything that gets through those layers faces the close-in weapon systems aboard the ships and around the bases themselves. The old Patriot missiles being pulled from stockpiles in Germany and Japan are being deliberately assigned to the drone threat, preserving the newer and more expensive PAC-3 interceptors for the ballistic missile engagements that require their precision. Iran's foreign minister warned that Iran would be firing back with everything it has if it comes under renewed attack, and that such a war would drag on far longer than its enemies anticipate. That warning reflects a genuine capability, not just bluster. But the United States is not building a force in the Arabian Sea designed to take one punch and reel. It is building a force designed to absorb Iran's opening salvo across every domain simultaneously, from the seafloor to the stratosphere, and still have enough strike capacity remaining to systematically dismantle everything Iran used to fire that salvo. Whether that force gets used depends on whether diplomats in Geneva can find language that both sides can live with. But the military answer to the question of how dangerous Iran is and how the United States intends to handle that danger is already positioned and waiting in the waters off the Persian Gulf. Russia's role cannot be ignored. Moscow and Tehran have grown closer for years, united by one goal: countering the United States. Russia has relied on Iranian drones in Ukraine. In return, Iran has gained Russian military technology, diplomatic protection at the United Nations, and greater global legitimacy. Their joint naval drills in the Strait of Hormuz are not symbolic. They are strategic. The message to Washington is simple: Iran is not isolated. American surveillance flights reinforce that message. Navy MQ-4C Triton drones have been operating near Iran's coastline, flying at 50,000 feet. They are unarmed, but highly visible. That visibility is intentional. It says, "We see you. We are monitoring every movement." More consequential is the presence of MQ-9 Reapers, armed drones capable of precision strikes. Iran can track them, but intercepting them would risk direct escalation. That asymmetry creates psychological pressure. The United States can observe and strike. Iran can protest, but with limited response options. As tensions surge between the United States and Iran, fueled by nationwide protests inside Iran and the escalating Iran-Israel confrontation, China has stepped in with unmistakable diplomatic backing for Tehran. Chinese technology has quietly become one of the most powerful tools behind Iran's internal control. Chinese firms have supplied advanced surveillance systems to Tehran, including facial recognition cameras, AI-powered tracking software, and large-scale crowd monitoring platforms. One company frequently mentioned in security export discussions is TND, a Chinese firm reportedly linked to surveillance sales across multiple authoritarian states. These systems allow Iranian authorities to identify protesters in real time, track individuals across different cities, and continue monitoring them long after demonstrations end. In simple terms, protesters can no longer disappear into a crowd. The cameras remember,